Okay, good morning, Asiacrypt. So, welcome to today's first session. It will be on secure multi-party computation. And we're going to have three talks. The first talk is on honest majority God MPC with order of depth Cs, rounds, and low online communication. The authors are Amit Agarwal, Alexander Ivan Damgard, and Daniel Escudero. And Amit is going to give the talk.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So today I'll present my work on honest majority guaranteed output delivery MPC with order depth C rounds and low online communication. And this is joint work with my co-authors, Alexander Bienstock, Ivan Damgard, and Daniel Escudero. So let's first start by going over what secure multi-party computation or MPC is. So here we have a bunch of parties, in this case 3, each with their private inputs, x1, x2, and x3, and they wish to compute some public function f jointly on their inputs by interacting with each other. So correctness says that at the end of the computation, every party should output the function output evaluated on their joint inputs. And privacy says that even if some subset of parties, let's say P1, is corrupt, then the parties should not learn anything more about other parties, honest parties' inputs, besides what is revealed from the output of the function. The setting that we'll be looking at is the following. So we have n parties and a computationally unbounded adversary, which can corrupt at most t parties in a malicious fashion. And we'll have n greater than 2t plus 1 assumption. This is also called honest majority assumption. We'll assume secure authenticated point-to-point channels between every pair of parties and a public broadcast channel. And the requirements that we have is we want guaranteed output delivery, which means that no matter what the adversary does, all honest parties should output the final value at the end of the computation. And we require statistical security to hold. So in this setting, there are works which can be divided broadly into two categories. So the first set of works have low communication and high rounds. And the state of the art here is the work by Goel et al. What low communication means is that the part of the communication which depends on the circuit size has only a multiplicative factor of n, where n is the number of parties and the number of field elements. But these kind of protocols have high number of rounds, which means that in the worst case, the number of rounds can be as high as order of n square. In the second category, we have protocols which have high communication, which means that the part of the communication which depends on the circuit size has this multiplicative factor, which is n to the 4. But on the other hand, these kind of protocols have low rounds, which means that the number of rounds is independent of the number of parties. And the natural question to ask here is, can we get the best of both categories? This question was recently answered by the work of Abraham et al. In t less than n over 3 case, which is the perfect setting. And in this work, we look at the n over 2 case with statistical security. So here is our result. So for n greater than 2t, we show that there exists a statistically secure MPC protocol for arbitrary arithmetic circuit C over some finite field of size 2 power kappa, where kappa is statistical security parameter, with the following costs. So let's look at the split between the offline and online cost. So in the offline part, we have constant rounds and C times NQ communication over P2P and broadcast. In the online phase, we have order of depth C many rounds, with online communication being order of C times N plus depth C times NQ over P2P and broadcast. So you can see that the total number of rounds is just order of depth C, whereas and the online communication, the part of the online communication that depends on the circuit size has only a factor of n, multiplicative factor of n. And here I'm ignoring some polynomial terms which do not in n, which do not depend on the circuit size. So the high-level flow is the following. So we start with an object called information checking signatures, also known as ICSig. And usually it's used to construct a verifiable secret sharing scheme. And then this is used to construct an MPC protocol. So this is what the usual flow looks like. We'll not proceed in this fashion. What we'll do is, instead of constructing a verifiable secret sharing scheme, what we'll construct an object so-called detectable secret sharing scheme. It's a relaxation of VSS, which we'll see in the next couple of slides. And then we'll use it to construct our MPC protocol. In fact, what we'll do is we will use a batched form of IC signatures where we can batch over m many secrets. And our detectable secret sharing scheme will have certain features as well. It will be packed, batched, and mass detectable, which means that each pack will contain many secrets, and we'll operate over many such packs. And in case some corruption occurs, we'll be able to identify omega n many corrupt parties and kick them out. So we'll see these in more details in the next slides. Okay, so let's start with our first ingredient, which is information theoretic signatures. Information checking signatures, IC-SIG for short. So what is this? So we have a dealer which has some secret S, and at a high level, you can think of IC signatures as an information theoretic analog of digital signatures or a commitment scheme in a three-party setting. So we have a dealer, and we have two other parties, which are known as intermediary and the receiver. In the signing phase, these parties interact between themselves, and the intermediary ends up with the secret S along with some signature, which we call IC signature. And the receiver ends up with some verification information. In the reveal phase, the intermediary can reveal the secret S along with the signature to the receiver, and then the receiver can output either accept or reject. So the guarantees that we want that are required out of such a scheme is the following. So if all three parties, the dealer, intermediary, and the receiver, are honest, then we want the guarantee that the secret S that the dealer started with will always be accepted by the receiver at the end of the reveal phase. If the dealer is corrupt, other two parties are honest, we want that at the end of the signing phase, there is some unique secret S prime that will be accepted in the reveal phase. If the intermediary is corrupt, we want the guarantee that the output of the receiver will always be reject for all secrets S prime, which is not the original secret S. And then if the receiver is corrupt, we want the guarantee that the receiver will have no information about the secret S at the end of the sharing phase. So the work of Patra and Rangan from 2010 showed an extension to the basic IC signature. And the extension is in two dimensions. First, instead of a single secret S, you have many secrets, S1 up till Sm. And instead of a single receiver, you have multiple receivers. To be specific, we have n receivers, P1 up till Pn. And they constructed a protocol for this setting. So here, the adversary can control any threshold T many receivers. So let's look at the cost of the PR10 IC signature protocol, which operates over m secrets at once. And here we'll assume that the threshold T of corruption is order n, and also the number of secrets is order n. So in the signing phase, the total cost is order n, both over P2P and broadcast. And we have constant rounds. In the reveal phase, we have the same costs as well. So naively, if you do this without any optimizations, you'll have order n square costs. So the contribution of PR10 is to make these costs as low as sharing a single secret. In our work, we provide a UC secure formulation of this PR10 scheme. So there are some nice properties of such IC signatures, with homomorphic properties of such IC6. So to be specific, you can add two secrets. So let's say you have a secret S1, which has been signed, and another secret S2, which has been signed. So you can add these up, meaning that the intermediary and the receiver can add up their respective information to derive an IC signature on the sum of the two values. Also, what you can do is you can multiply a secret with a public value. So you have some secret S, and you have some public value U. You can multiply these two and to receive an IC signature on the product of these two values. Now, you are seeing that the lock that I'm showing here is bigger. And to get into the specifics, what is happening is that these locks that the intermediary is holding, the signatures, are actually polynomials. To be specific, if the secret S is of dimension m, and the threshold corruption is t, then the polynomial of the purple lock is of degree t plus m minus 1, whereas the polynomial defined by the public value u is of degree m minus 1. And when you multiply these two, the degree increases to t plus 2 times m minus 1. So we'll use this object, this bashed form of IC signatures to construct what we call packed, bashed, and masked detectable secret sharing. So before going into that, let's look at what normal verifiable secret sharing scheme is, because our detectable secret sharing is a relaxation of this object. So as some of you might know, this verifiable secret sharing scheme extends the concept of secret sharing to the malicious setting. So here we have a dealer which has some secret S, and we have n parties P1 up till Pn. And by malicious here, I mean that adversary can corrupt up to T parties and the dealer in an active way. So now during the sharing phase, this dealer takes its secret S and shares it into pieces S1 up till Sn to all the parties. In the reconstruction phase, the parties announce their shares to each other and reconstruct the secret. The properties that we desire out of a verifiable secret sharing scheme is the following. So we want privacy, which means that if the dealer is honest, then the view of the adversary corrupting at most T parties is independent of the secret S at the end of the sharing phase. Correctness says that if dealer is honest, then all honest parties should output S at the end of reconstruction phase. And then we have a binding property which says that if the dealer is corrupt, then the joint view of the honest parties at the end of the sharing phase defines some unique value S prime, which is what will be reconstructed at the end of reconstruction phase. So this is what a standard VSS or verifiable secret sharing scheme is. In the recent work of Abraham et al., a relaxation of this is proposed, which is called detectable secret sharing scheme. It's very similar to verifiable secret sharing scheme, except of the differences which are marked in red. So for point number 2 and point number 3, what we require is that the reconstruction might either succeed or fail, but in case it fails, then you will end up identifying omega n many corrupt parties. So just going back and forth between VSS and DSS, you can see that the difference is just that if you fail to reconstruct, you identify omega n many corrupt parties. So Abraham et al. Used this kind of DSS relaxation of VSS to get the linear communication complexity in the n/3 setting, and we'll try to do something similar in the n/2 setting. So let's look at how we construct such a DSS scheme for the statistical n/2 setting. To do so, we'll start with the classic construction of the normal standard VSS scheme by Kremer et al. From 1999, based on bivariate secret sharing along with standard IC signatures. So you have some dealer with some secret S, and you have n parties, P1 up till Pn. So what the dealer does is it samples a random bivariate polynomial, capital F, defined on two variables x, y, which has degree t in each variable. Recall that t is the threshold of corruption, where the secret S is embedded at coordinate 0, 0. Now we can visualize such a bivariate polynomial as a two-dimensional matrix of evaluation points. And now what the dealer does is it takes the ith row and ith column of this matrix and sends it to the ith party. Not just this, what the dealer, so you can think of these, the blue row as a share and the column, green column, as a sub-share or some kind of authentication information that will be used later. So not just this, what the dealer does is it actually signs each entry of this row and column using an IC signature scheme. So once this is done, here is the view of the party PI. So the party PI is holding the ith row and ith column in this matrix along with IC signatures on them. And it will perform some kind of checks on this row and column. We don't need to go into the details of what these checks are, which is why I have blurred this in gray. But it does some kind of consistency checks on these rows and columns, and either it aborts or proceeds to the next step. So if it proceeds to the next step, what it does is it takes each entry in the column and tries to sign it towards a respective party. So the party PI takes its green column and signs the first entry of this green column towards party P1, then signs the second entry towards party P2, and so on. So this is a second level of IC signature scheme that is being invoked. So once this is done, you have two locks on each entry in the green column. And once every party does this, you have two locks on each entry in this 2D matrix of values. Once this is done, the party PI then performs some more additional checks on the blue row and the green column that it is holding. We don't need to go into the details of these checks, except the last part, which is highlighted in red. So it either aborts identifying a corrupt dealer, or it outputs its blue row as the share. So this is the end of the sharing phase. Now let's look at how the reconstruction works. So in the reconstruction phase, the party PI, which is holding this blue row, starts by invoking a signature revelation on the blue row using the green locks that it acquired. And then once this is done, once every party has done this, each party checks whether the blue rows that are being revealed lie on a degree T polynomial and whether the signature revelation is accepting. And if this is true, you use the valid blue rows to interpolate the bivariate polynomial f x comma y. So let's look at what the cost of this classical VSS scheme is. So we have the cost of sharing phase and the cost of reconstruction phase. Turns out that in the sharing phase, you have order n square invocations of a signature scheme, both the sign and reveal phase. Order n square because roughly for every cell you are in the matrix, you are invoking a sign and reveal call. And for the reconstruction phase, you do order n square many signature revelations. So considering that the cost of a standard IC signature without any batching is order n communication over P2P and broadcast. And IC sig sign in brackets 1 means you are signing one field element at a time. So considering these are the costs of the standard IC signature, what you get is the following cost of the sharing and reconstruction phase. So you have order n cube communication over P2P and broadcast and order 1 routes. So this is the classical construction of the VSS scheme from Kremer et al. From 1999. So the first optimization that you can apply over this scheme is you can, instead of sharing a single secret, the dealer can share many secrets in parallel. So now instead of S, you have S1 up till Sm. And think of M as being order n. So now if you just do this and look at the cost of sharing and reconstruction phase, what we'll end up with is order n square invocations of signature, the IC signature scheme, but now the signature scheme is being invoked on vectors of length m. And recall that the scheme from Patra and Rangan from 2010 has this optimized cost where even if you sign m many secrets at a time, the cost is same as signing a single secret. So plugging these costs in, you get order n cube communication over P2P and broadcast, order 1 rounds, but now you are sharing order n many secrets. Okay, so the second optimization that we can apply over this scheme is we can vectorize each secret using packed secret sharing. So earlier we were sharing m field elements. Now we'll share m vectors. Each vector would be of length, let's say L, many field elements. So to do this, the dealer would sample, usually what the dealer does is sample a random bivariate polynomial fi for each I with degree t in each variable and embed the secret si at 0, 0. But now since we have each si is a vector, we'll use packed secret sharing. And to do this, we'll increase the degree in the variable x from t to t plus L minus 1. This is like a standard packed secret sharing scheme. And now you pack the secrets at different coordinates. So now when you do this, you don't get the original VSS, you get something relaxed, which is a DSS scheme, because now when you want to reconstruct in variable x, you need more than t plus 1 valid shares. but we have only t plus 1 honest parties. So reconstruction might fail. And this is where we get the relaxation to DSS. In more detail, let's go back to the reconstruction phase. So in reconstruction phase, we can no longer interpolate this bivariate polynomial using all the valid blue rows because the degree in X has increased. So what we do is a different procedure. We look at the set of valid rows, and if the size of this set is greater than t plus L minus 1, recall t plus L minus 1 is the degree in variable X, then we'll interpolate it. Otherwise, we'll just output the complement of that set as the set of all corrupt parties. And this set would be at least of size t minus L plus 2. And if you fix the parameters of t and L appropriately, this would be, you can get omega n corrupt parties to be identified. So now summarizing, we have the following cost of our detectable secret sharing scheme. Dealer has m vectors, each of length L, and assuming T is order n, L is order n, M is order n, you have the cost of sharing phase, which is order n cube, P2P broadcast, order 1 rounds, and same for reconstruction phase. Also, if the reconstruction fails, you identify omega n corrupt parties. So now you are sharing order n square many secrets in a sense using order n cube communication. So again, DSS has some nice homomorphic properties, which means that you can, like if you use this double bracket notation to denote DSS sharing of some m many vectors, each of length L. Then given two such sharings, you can add them up. You can also multiply them with a public value U, which is interpreted as m vectors, each of length L, to get the product of these component-wise product of these two things. So now let me quickly go through the MPC protocol. So we'll use the TurboBack MPC protocol from Escudero et al. So let's look at a high level how it proceeds. So the high level idea is that each wire will have a random mask Ri. The mask of the output wires of the addition gates will be implicitly set to the sum of its mask of its input wires. And for every wire, we let the parties learn a masked version of the value. And we group input wires and output wires of multiplication gates in each layer and use packed secret sharing to perform a SIMD-like computation. And these groups will be of size order n square. Now, in the offline phase, we require some steps to be done. For every output wire of a multiplication gate, we need to sample this random value R, which is copied n square many times. Similarly, for input wires, along with the standard VSS sharing of R. And for every output wire of multiplication gates, we need to sample these packed Beaver triples. And we show in our work that the first step can be achieved using C times n cube P2P broadcast communication by just extending Damkard-Nielsen and randomness extraction protocol. Similarly, for the other two steps, we have C times n cube communication for second step and C times n square communication by extending Chaudhary-Patra triple extraction protocol using our DSS scheme. For the online phase, we require that for every input wire, each party broadcast a masked version of the group of input wires that it owns. For every layer, we invoke DSS reconstruction procedure for every group of multiplication gates. And for every output group of output gates, we invoke DSS reconstruct. And in case we abort at any phase, we kick out enough parties so that the threshold is lower to n/3 setting. So now for the first step, we'll have communication C times n by using our DSS scheme. Similarly, for the second part, we have C times n plus depth C times n cube communication. For the third step, we have C times n cube, C times n over P2P and broadcast. And for the last step, once we kick out enough parties, we can invoke the existing protocol of Abraham et al. To get C times n plus input wires many times n cube communication over P2P and broadcast. That brings us to our final result with these costs. Thanks.
We are running out of time, but while the next talk is set up, we can take a quick question. So, any questions from the audience? Okay, if not, then I'll ask a quick question, but the next talk can be set up meanwhile. Yeah, so I mean, you stopped at n cubed, right? So what is the challenge that you have come across to sort of
to
go
get
beyond?
right. So the problem is that in TurboPack MPC, for every single output wire, you need to get these copies of R copied n square many times. So we don't, like, if we use TurboPack in a Blackbox fashion, we don't see how to get beyond that. But if you open up maybe the internals of TurboPack online phase, maybe you can do some optimizations and get beyond.
Yeah, we'll talk offline.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's thank the author.
Test.
Okay, so the next talk of the session will be online, and the title of the talk is Perfectly Secure Multi-Party Computation with Linear Communication Complexity over Any Modulus. Okay, the authors are Daniel Escudero, Yifan Song, and Wenhao Wang. And Wenhao will give the talk. Over to you, Wenhao.
Thank you. Test. Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So yeah. So hi, I'm Wenhao Wang. I'm a second-year PhD student at Yale University. Today, I'm very excited to present our work, Perfectly Secure Multi-Party Computation with Linear Communication Complexity over Any Modulus. This work is in collaboration with Daniel, Yang, Yifan. So let's get started. First, let me give very brief introduction of our MPC settings in this work. So in our work, we consider MPC over circuits over the final ring of integral modulo Q, or namely Z over QZ. And in our MPC circuit, there consists of addition gates and multiplication gates. And from this side, you can see an example circuit composed of addition and multiplication. So, and also in addition to the circuit settings, we assume P2P secure communication channels. And in our work, we consider information theoretic MPC protocols where the adversary has unbounded computation power. And we also want to achieve perfect security, which has two parts. The first part is like the adversary can be malicious. So it can arbitrarily deviate from the protocol to its advantage. And they also want the protocol to have guaranteed output delivery. So for the parties and the number of correct parties, we in the rest of this talk, n denotes the number of parties and t will denote the number of correct parties, and we assume n will be greater or equal to 3t plus 1. So for some background of our results, so first, let me first discuss communication complexity. So communication complexity in MPC protocols is a general way to evaluate the performance of protocols, because they are like the real world protocol efficiency is most affected by this. And also in information theoretic MPC, it is desired to achieve a total order of C times N communication complexity. So we denote this as linear communication complexity, which is both linear in the size of the circuit, like the number of gates in the circuit, and also the number of parties. And also regarding the choose of the ring, where the MPC protocol is built upon, we focus on final ring of integral modulo Q, where there are some special cases such as binary computation or int32 or int64 computations. And in GIS19, in the previous work, for the first time, perfect security and linear communication complexity, independent of the depth of circuit, are achieved at the same time for information theoretic MPC protocols. Yet it is not clear how to achieve these two results at the same time for rings Z over QZ in rings of integral modulo, especially when the modulus Q is small. So the challenge is that when the modulus Q is small, we cannot apply previous techniques which are dependent on Shamir sharings over fields of size at least n plus 1. So for a quick background of Shamir secret sharings, so it's typically we share secrets using Reed-Solomon code where the secret is located at a fixed point 0. But using Shamir secret sharings is that it only works for rings where interpolation over ON points is possible. So it will not work for rings Z over QZ when Q is small, or rings where integral rings where such interpolation points do not exist. So in our work, we asked this research question: is it possible to develop an MPC protocol over any ring of integers modulus, especially small moduli, with both perfect security and linear communication complexity independent of the depth of the circuit? So we show our results as follows. We answer this question affirmatively by providing an MPC protocol with perfect security against an adversary controlling t less than n over 3 parties. And this protocol has the power to compute circuit C of any modulus, and it has total communication complexity that scales with C times n with some overhead independent of the size of the circuit. And note that our result does not require each circuit layer to have omega n weights. So our circuit does not have a term that's dependent on the depth of the circuit. And in the following of the talk, I want to share a note here that via Chinese remainder theorem, we can decompose any z over qz into multiple rings of form z over p to the kz, where p is a prime. So in the following of the talk, in the later slides, we may only consider cases for circuits of a ring of z over p to the kz. All right. So before diving into our techniques, let me first introduce several related concepts and tools and also related works. So recall that Shamir secret sharings only work for rings where interpolation over all endpoints is possible. So how can we, again, use Shamir sharings, which are central to the information theoretic MPC protocols? So here we consider ring extensions of degree m. It has been shown in previous work that in such ring extensions, there exist these interpolation points. So, but if we just naively express each base ring element using an extension ring Shamir sharing, will have a log n overhead. So our work is also dependent on the tool of reverse multiplication friendly embeddings, or RMFE for short. So which is a pair of z over to the kz linear mappings. The first mapping phi maps a vector in the base ring to the extension ring, and the other mapping C maps from the extension ring back to the base ring, back to the vector in the base ring. And what's good about this pair of mapping is that it preserves the element-wise multiplication property. That is, if you apply C to two of the phi mappings, you'll get the element-wise multiplication of two vectors. And so as just discussed, one instrument solution to construct MPC protocol with perfect security is to use an extension ring and the previous technique in GIS19 to divide the circuit. But the problem is that we'll have a log n overhead. So in another previous work, SY18 improves this to order of C times n using RMFE when computing many copies of the same circuit, that is a same D circuit. But the problem of their technique is that it's hard to generalize to general circuits where wires do not align, as we may see in the later slides. And the other problem I want to briefly mention here is that it requires the circuit to have a large enough width per layer. So it has an order of n squared times log n times the depth of a circuit term intrinsic to their protocol. Okay, so this graph actually demonstrates their techniques. So let's assume that we have 3 gates in the circuit, and each gate has fan in and fan out both 3. So the first addition gates, you apply feed to the input vectors, and you feed them into the addition gates, and then you get the output also in the Shamir sharings according to the property of multiplication RMFEs. So in their protocol, you can be seen here that it only works when the wires are aligned and each gate has fan in and fan outs exactly 3, and the gates and also the wires are strictly aligned in the circuits. So now we need to tackle this first challenge, that how to align the wires in general circuits. When, as you can see in this figure, that some wires of the outputs may be randomly permuted, and there also be some cases where you may need wires in another gate's output as an input of the next gate. So here, how to solve this problem, we borrowed the idea the technique of network routing, first introduced in GPS 21 and also improved in GPS 22. However, I want to mention here that network routing technique was originally developed for packet secret sharings, and we need to adapt it to RMFE techniques. So assume that we have a black box network routing and which can magically align the wires. So we can do the following. So we can, after evaluating each layer of the circuits, we have some randomly permuted wires or permuted wires, and we apply this network routing, then the wires will be aligned and can be fed into the next gates. So how to achieve this? So let me first give a quick recap of the network routing techniques. So it's basically composes of 4 phases. Fan out, first you perform some fan outs, make some extra copies of some output wires of some certain gates. And then you permute the output wires of each gate. And then you go into some secret collection phase. In the secret collection phase, as you may recall, in the previous figure, some wires may come from multiple different gates. Some input wires may come from multiple output gates wires. So you need to collect these wires into a single group. So this phase is called secret collection. And finally, you perform an extra round of permutation of these wires so that the wires are finally in the correct order that can be fed into the next gate. So for fan out and permutes, here's some observation here. There are actually linear transformations. So we may only need to develop a linear transformation protocol for both of them. And for secret collection, we will have to develop another protocol for it. So let's dive into them one by one. First, how to perform the linear transformations for network routing with RMFEs. So the goal of linear transformation can be abstracted here. So we want to we have a secret sharing of phi of vector x, and we want to get a linear transformation of it, that is a sharing of phi L of this vector x. So the techniques is here. So you first prepare a random vector R and its corresponding Shamir sharings, phi of LR and phi R. And then all the parties will robustly construct the masked inputs vector x plus x vector r, and then compute the linear mapping of x plus r. And finally, all the parties will get the Shamir sharing of phi Lx by computing phi Lx plus r minus the Shamir sharing of phi Lr. And next, so what's remaining is how to do the secret collection. To do secret collection, the scenario is like you want to collect a single vector where the jth element of the vector is held in the xj vector. So here's what you actually do here. So you first compute the Shamir sharing by timing the Shamir sharing of the jth inputs with the j space vector. And note that this is not what was desired eventually. So you need to run some re-encode protocol, which has been introduced in the previous work, and to get the final desired output from this middle Shamir sharing results. And finally, you can get the collected secrets by just adding the re-encoded outputs together. So now you have already got a network routing protocol that works with RMFEs. But still, we need to tackle this problem. So we need to remove the term dependent on the depth of the circuit. So the problem is that only using network routing, we need to evaluate the circuit layer by layer. And each layer will have at least order n squared times log n cost, where the n squared comes from robust multiplication protocol, and log n comes from the size of the extension ring element. So it will lead to an order n squared times log n times d, where d is the depth of circuit overhead. And if the circuit is narrow, that is, the depth may be order of this entire size of circuits, and the total combination complexity is no longer linear in n. So in order to remove this circuit depth dependent on nonlinear term, we need to somehow evaluate the multiplication gates and also further addition gates of Shamir sharings over different circuit layers. So here we introduce a high-level idea in this slide like this. First, you first run some optimistic evaluation of the gates using additive secret sharings. And because the additive secret sharings, you do not need to, when you reconstruct the secrets, you do not need to have a large communication complexity because you do not need to pack them together to reconstruct them. And after evaluating them optimistic with additive secret sharings, there may be errors that cannot be detected in this phase. So you need to, again, go back to the beginning of some of a group of circuits, a segment of the circuits, and to perform robust verification of the computation results in the optimistic evaluation. So if the results are correct, then you can get the final output in Shamir sharings. But if on the other hand, results are incorrect, we will run into some secret localization error localization protocol to localize which party are to be blamed. So here I introduce some background of additive sharings. So additive sharings, I denote them with these angles, and where each party will hold some share S, and the sum of these sharings will be equal to X. So I also want to note briefly here that these additive secret sharings can be derived from Shamir sharings easily and locally. So with this high-level idea, our protocol that's to remove this circuit depth dependent term actually look like this. First, you divide the circuit into multiple circuit segments, and you evaluate these segments one by one and perform this optimistic evaluation segment verification one by one. So let's assume you are in the middle of this entire process, and you have some previous verified segments results. So first, you are going to the optimistic evaluation phase, where you first compute the additive sharings from the previous Shamir sharing outputs, and then you evaluate these circuit segments, which may span across multiple circuit layers using these additive secret sharings. And after you evaluate the circuit, evaluate this circuit segment and get the final additive sharing outputs, you can then get the Shamir sharings with the help of pre-processed randomness, and you can perform a network routing protocol again to get again the input of the circuit segments. So you can get the intermediate gates of input Shamir sharings by running this network routing protocol. And because now you have all the Shamir sharing of the inputs, you can robustly evaluate the circuit segments with these Shamir sharings. And after evaluating this segment with Shamir sharings, you can check, all the parties locally checks whether or not their intermediate result is consistent with the previous optimistic evaluation phase, because these Shamir sharings are derived from the additive sharing, so they may also be faulty, but we prove a theorem that if the Shamir sharings results and the additive sharing results are consistent, then the circuit evaluation must be correct. So it is if and only if relation. So finally, you check all the parties locally check consistency and run business agreement protocol to see if all parties have got the consistent results. And if all parties' results are consistent, then you get this segment result to be verified. Otherwise, if the results is inconsistent, we may further need to run a fault localization protocol to find a pair of dispute parties and limit them and get back to the beginning of the segment evaluation using additive secret sharings. So let's dive into the three protocols one by one. First, regarding the optimistic evaluation with additive sharings, it actually look like this. So all parties first prepare beaver triples in the extension ring, phi A, phi B, and phi C, such that which may satisfy some multiplication, element-wise multiplication property or element-wise addition property. And note that there is a leader in each circuit segment. So to evaluate the circuit segment using additive secure sharings, it's not just evaluate them naively, but we need to apply some tricks in order to make the verification process go smoothly. So the leader first construct the gate input and send to all parties, and for an addition gate, all parties actually compute the output like this. So it's not like they just use the additive secret sharing to get the output, but they get the output again used with the help of the randomness prepared in the beaver triples. And similarly, there's an equation for the multiplication gates, which shows how you can get the output. And then you can all parties can locally derive the additive secret sharings using with the help of this Shamir sharings, which is opted from this phase. And from this step, you can finally get the addition and multiplication results of the entire circuit segment. And then I want to introduce the segment verification protocol using Shamir sharings. And now, since you have got all the intermediate results of U and V, you can actually get the Shamir sharings of all the gate input Phi-X and Phi-Y. And with these Shamir sharings, you can further get the Shamir sharings of the entire segment's gate outputs. And then you can all parties will run a network routing protocol, which is introduced previously, to robustly get all the inputs gates again, which I denote here as phi tilde vector x and phi tilde vector y, where tilde x and tilde y may be different from the real gate inputs because they are derived from the additive secret sharings. And all parties robustly reconstruct, again, the intermediate values tilde u and tilde v. So the theorem is that if tilde u and tilde v are both consistent with the previous u and v's got from the optimistic evaluation phase, then the second evaluation must be correct. So all parties run Bayesian agreement to check if they are consistent, and if they agree that all results are consistent, they perform the remaining fan-out operations of the wires required in the later segments. And if in the bad case that something goes wrong, so that is some party reports inconsistency at a certain gate input. So the leader and the party that reports the inconsistency will need to find a pair of dispute parties. So we abstract this fault localization problem here as follows. The leader receives all shares of some random additive sharings S and O plus O, where O is the additive sharing of 0, and all party has a robust sharing of some elements, where S is derived from this robust sharing. So how to do this fault localization here? So first, all parties additionally prepare a Shamir sharing P of a random parity element. The random parity element is is an element where the sum of entry of CP is 0. And during the randomness preparation, because of the randomness preparation particle structure, we'll have the additive sharing O will actually be equal to the sum of OI, where the additive sharing OI is prepared by the S party. And similarly, for the sharing P, the Shamir sharing of PI is prepared by the S party. And from PI, we can actually derive another sharing OI prime.
Wenhao, I just want to interrupt quickly. So your time is actually up. So do you mind winding up as fast as possible? Yeah.
Sure. So following the result in DFO 12, each party will distribute another mask of additive sharing of 0 and reveal the leader to the leader, and all the party will reveal to leader OI minus OI prime plus OI prime prime of all the shares that have sent and received. And with this, the leader will be able to locate a pair of distributed parties, and finally will eliminate 2 of them from the leader and the pair of distributed parties. So here are the takeaways of today's talk. We developed an information theoretic MPC protocol that achieves perfect security and linear communication complexity independent of the depth of circuits over rings Z over QZ with arbitrary small modulus Q. And there are some components maybe of individual interest. First, we have an optimistic evaluation protocol across multiple layers of the circuit using additive sharings. And then we have a network routing protocol that works with RMFE for the robust verification of the previous optimistic evaluation. Finally, we developed a fault localization protocol for dispute control. And thank you all for your attention.
Okay. Thank you, Wenha, for the great talk. So while again we set up the next talk, we can take a quick question from the audience.
Thank you for your talk. Let's suppose there is a malicious party that consistently reports that there is mistaken calculations. How would it affect the speed and the amount of computations during the execution of the scheme?
Yes. So as you can see here from this protocol, if there is malicious behavior that's detected in this consistency check protocol, we'll go back to fault localization, where a pair of dispute parties will be eliminated from the protocol. So because there are up to n/3 dishonest parties controlled by the adversary, so this bad thing may only happen up to n/3 times. So there may be some overhead, but this term is independent of the size of the circuit. Let me know if this answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's thank the speaker again. Okay, so the last talk of the session is on dishonest majority constant round MPC with linear communication from DDH. The authors are Vipul Goel, Junru Lee, Ankit Kumar Mishra, Rafael Ostrovsky, Yifan Song, and Chen Kai Weng. And good to see that Vipul is going to give the talk in person.
Okay, thanks, Arpita. So it will be a talk on dishonest majority MPC in constant round with linear communication. Okay, so let's start with the setting of multi-party computation. We have a bunch of parties, and parties, up to T of them can be corrupted. And we assume a complete network of bilateral point-to-point channels. And each of these parties may have a secret input, x1 to xn. And the goal, of course, is to compute some circuit, some function of these inputs. All of these parties get the output y. And the privacy says that the adversarial parties, they don't learn anything beyond the output of the function. Okay, so the setting which we are interested in this work is, we have the synchronous network. The messages are guaranteed to be delivered within a bounded amount of time. We are interested in the maximum corruption setting. So all except one party can be corrupted. Up to n-1 parties can be corrupted. And then the adversary is fully malicious, can deviate from the protocol, and so on. And we are interested in security with a bot. Okay. So as I mentioned, we are interested in the efficiency of the protocols in this setting. By efficiency, I am mostly interested in communication complexity and round complexity. And we will try to simultaneously optimize the both. So the literature can be sort of roughly divided into two directions. Communication efficient protocols, but non-constant round MPC. Starting with the SPDZ protocol, which has had a lot of impact. And there's a bunch of follow-ups. So it has very good communication. O of circuit size times n is the number of parties, relying on pseudo-random correlation generators. So linear communication in circuit size and number of parties, but the round complexity can be linear in the circuit depth, so not constant. And then we have constant round protocols, but the communication is not so good. BMR protocol was the first constant round protocol in the dishonest majority setting. And there have been, a bunch of follow-ups.
the state-of-art concretely efficient protocols, at least, they require circuit size times n square. So quadratic in the number of parties. Round complexity can be constant. And then, of course, there are like magic protocols using FHE, multi-key FHE, constant round, very little communication, but they are not concretely efficient. So I'll not mention that. In this work, we are mostly focused on concretely efficient protocols, which we can implement in practice. Okay, so the natural question now is that, can we sort of get the best of both worlds? Can we construct a fully malicious MPC protocol in the dishonest majority setting with constant rounds and linear communication complexity? And so this is our result, assuming DDH, LPN, and random oracles. Random oracles is optional, as I will mention. There's a computationally secure constant round MPC protocol, fully malicious adversary can control n-1 parties, and it requires communication which is linear in circuit size and the number of parties. And LPN assumption comes from the usage of SPDZ protocol for certain aspects, and random oracle is added only for concrete efficiency. If you don't like random oracle, we can replace it with the PRG. Let me mention briefly our techniques. We will go more into detail later on. So the main difficulty in previous solutions is the high-level idea in BMR is that the N parties, they jointly try to construct a garbled circuit. And the construction of garbled circuit requires constructing gate tables, which in turn requires using a symmetric key encryption. So the main problem is all parties need to jointly compute symmetric key encryption algorithms where the key as well as the message involved are secret shared, right? So you need to run an MPC to compute a ciphertext, and this MPC will involve like the circuit of the encryption algorithm and so on. So it can be expensive. And just a very high level overview of our ideas. You can think of it as like 3 different stages. So first of all, we move from symmetric key encryption to public key encryption, right? What is the advantage? The advantage is in public key encryption, public key can be learned by all the parties. So the parties can locally encrypt any message of their choice. It's not like there's a secret key, secret shared. You cannot even encrypt without running an MPC, right? And how do we, use a public key jointly prepared by all the parties? We use a key homomorphic public key encryption. It can be instantiated using DDH, and it will allow us to generate the private and the public key pairs efficiently. And then finally, okay, you can encrypt, you have the public key, but you still don't have the message. You only have shares of the message. So the message M to be encrypted is secret shared. Our idea is that rather than using an MPC to encrypt, each party locally directly encrypts its own share. Okay, and this will give you like n different ciphertexts, each containing a share of the message. Concatenation of these ciphertexts together can be viewed as a ciphertext having the message M, right? And we will try to put these 3 steps in context in more detail. So some limitations of our result, it doesn't support the free XOR technique. Our construction is based on DDH, which works over a large prime field. The free XOR technique works over the binary extension field. Then computational complexity, maybe it's not as good because public key operations, it's more expensive than secret key operations. But public key operations can be done locally rather than over an MPC circuit. And then the garbled circuit size now grows with the number of parties because our ciphertexts are not compact, right? Each ciphertext is like n components and different shares encrypted together. So the evaluation also scales with the number of parties n. So here's the outline for rest of the talk. We will review Yao's garbled circuit and the BMR protocol, which is what our protocol is based on. then our solution, and then we have implemented our protocol. So I'll briefly talk about the experiments. Okay, so Yav's garble circuit, I assume most of us are familiar with it since this is an MPC session. So think about this gate, the AND gate. So we have 3 wires, input wires A and B, and then there's the output wire C. So the idea is that for each wire W in the circuit, we prepare 3 items. So we prepare a random mask bit. Let's call it lambda W. And then there are 2 random wire labels, LW0, LW1. One will correspond to the value on the wire being 0. Other will correspond to value on the wire being 1. Now, when the evaluator evaluates this garble circuit, it will always learn the masked wire value on that particular wire. So let's say VW is the value on the wire. The evaluator will learn VW plus lambda W. So it's masked, or you can think of it as XOR. And the evaluator also learns one of the labels, but not the other one. And the circuit is evaluated inductively. So how is this achieved? It's achieved using garbled gate tables. So let's say for wires A and B, evaluator learns the masked wire values. Let's call them I, j. The evaluator needs to learn the masked value on the output wire. So this can be formalized as the function f I, j. This is the function for which MPC will be needed. So it will unmask the 2 masked values. So I plus lambda A would just be VA. Then J plus lambda B would just be VB. You multiply them because we are evaluating the AND gate, and then you mask the resulting value. So this is what the evaluator would need. To achieve that, we will prepare a gate table having 4 entries. The garbler would prepare 4 ciphertexts corresponding to 4 possible cases of I, j. And then an evaluator with 2 of the wire labels can learn the one of the output wire labels. So that's sort of the basic idea. And Yav's garble circuit, they have been very useful in 2-party computation. One party prepares the garble circuit, another party evaluates it. But in the multi-party setting, it's less clear how to use it. And this is where the very nice work of Beaver, Mikali, and Rogave from 90s came in. So all parties jointly emulate the garbler, and they prepare a single garble circuit, which one of the parties can then evaluate. So these are the 3 steps in BMR. Our contribution will be in sort of improving the 3rd step, essentially. So each party jointly samples mask bits and wire labels. So each party will individually sample one of the shares of the mask, as well as one of the shares of each of the wire labels. So this way, the parties end up with additive sharing of all the labels, all the masks. Now, for every I, j, so for every gate, essentially, you can compute f I, j as we discussed in the previous slide, and the output wire label. And this can be done using any dishonest majority MPC such as SPDZ and so on. So the nice thing here, there's no encryption involved in this step. Okay, this is just secret sharing, reconstruction, choosing the right label, then outputting shares of that label. And then finally, once you have shares of the message, which you want to encrypt, you can jointly compute the ciphertext. And this would typically require another MPC, which would involve the circuit of the encryption scheme, which is what we are hoping to avoid. Right? So the main difficulty is computing the ciphertext securely, where both key and the message are secret shared. And yeah, you need to use the underlying encryption scheme in a non-black box way. So there have been a bunch of previous attempts to solve this problem. There are some works which try to use separate wire labels for separate parties, so that you don't have secret sharing of the wire label, but you actually have the full wire label. The downside is the communication becomes quadratic in the number of parties. Some works target suboptimal corruption threshold. So rather than n-1, the corruption threshold can be lower. But these techniques don't work in the optimal corruption threshold setting, which is the focus of our work. And then there's a final line of work which uses MPC-friendly encryption scheme. So you will do an MPC for the encryption circuit, but it can be more efficient. But they can achieve linear communication, but they are not concretely efficient. Okay, so now let's look at the ideas for our solution. So just the very basic idea in a very simple form first. So let's recall the goal, right? So the parties have sharing of the key, sharing of the message, and they want to obtain the ciphertext. They want to encrypt the message. In fact, to compute a gate table, you have actually two keys. You need to double encrypt, but let's ignore that for now. So main difficulty is computing the ciphertext securely when we have secret shares of the key and the message. So let's focus on key first. Okay, we switch to public key encryption. We make sure that public key can be learned by all the parties in clear, whereas the secret key is still secret shared. So this gives you the ability to encrypt locally if you have the message, right? So if you use public key encryption, we only need to worry about secret sharing of the message. Now the two remaining difficulties are, how do we actually compute the keys? Public key public, secret key shared. How do we achieve this? And how to efficiently compute now the ciphertext, where the message is secret shared. So let's talk about preparing the key pairs. So we use a public key encryption, which is linearly homomorphic for the public key. What this means is that if you have like two different key pairs, you can combine them, and this plus tilde denotes the homomorphic operation. And you can get a single public key, and SK1, SK2 can serve as the shares of the secret. Okay, so the parties can, if you have something like this, the parties can just individually sample key pairs, PKI samples, SKI, PKI. You can aggregate the public keys. So every party sends their public key to P1, or you can call it P-king or whatever you want. P1 aggregates them just by homomorphically adding them. Then it broadcasts PK. And remember that right now we are in the semi-honest setting. Let's not worry about parties cheating at this point. Okay, so all the parties learn the final aggregated public key, and then they have additive shares of the secret key. And we will instantiate this using El-Gamal encryption. Now solving difficulty 2. So you do have the capability to encrypt. You have the public key, but you still need the message, right? But the message is secret shared. So seems like maybe we didn't make any progress. Maybe you still need to use an MPC to obtain the encryption of the message. The main observation now is that this ciphertext, this is to allow the evaluator to decrypt and recover the message M, right? It doesn't need to be compact. It can have any format. So what we will do is that each party having the public key would just locally encrypt its share of the message. So party PI would compute CTI, which is an encryption of a share of MI, a share of M, right? And then all these ciphertexts are sent to the evaluator. During the evaluation, the evaluator can decrypt all of these ciphertexts, recover all the messages, and just XOR them to recover the final message. And fortunately, this still is like linear communication per gate because each party is sending a single ciphertext to the evaluator. And there's no MPC involved. It's all just local operation. Right, so here's the summary of our idea. First, we rely on public key encryption. We use key homomorphic public key encryption. And then instead of having a single ciphertext for the message M, each party would locally encrypt its share of the message M, and the concatenation of all these ciphertexts would serve as the ciphertext of the message M. So how do we instantiate the public key encryption? As I said before, we can use Al-Gamal encryption based on DDH. So in Al-Gamal encryption, the key generation is just SK, and then PK is G to the power SK. SK is a group element. And it is key homomorphic because if you multiply the two PKs together, the secret key in the exponent will get added. And Al-Gamal encryption actually also has a different homomorphic property, which is multiplicatively homomorphic in the messages. Turns out it's not important at all. We don't use it. So we use a lesser well-known homomorphic property of Al-Gamal. Now, here's a small issue, which is that the message space of Al-Gamal encryption is the groups associated with the DDH assumption. But the message that we need to encrypt in our construction is an additive share, right? So to solve this problem, we can either use a random oracle or we can use extractors and PRG. So to use it to use extractors, we can use PK to the power R as a random source. It has enough pseudo entropy. You can apply a seeded extractor. You can expand it using a PRG. And you can use that as a one-time pad encryption. Or for better efficiency, if you want to really implement it, you can try using a random oracle. So just apply random oracle to PK to the power R, and that gives you a random unpredictable uniform string essentially. Okay, so this is as far as the semi-honest setting goes. What about the malicious setting? So first, let's see what can go wrong in the malicious setting. So recall that first of all, the parties send shares of the public key to a single party, let's say the king, who will aggregate it and who will distribute it. What if peaking is malicious? It can give you the incorrect public key. Another problem is, recall that each party evaluates its share of the message M individually. So you can cheat. You can give a wrong ciphertext. So a corrupted party may encrypt an incorrect share. So these are the two high-level issues. Let's go through each of them one by one. For the first one, we can use information theoretic MAC to solve the problem. So we can generate a random authenticated sharing. You have shares of the secret key, SK. Then you have shares of delta, which can be seen as like key of a one-time MAC. And then you have shares of SK times delta. Okay, so if you can authenticate the secret key, then you can also authenticate the public key. You need to check a random linear combination of all the secret keys and public keys. And the idea is that if any pair of the keys is incorrect, their random linear combination can be incorrect. So you can detect that. So you can detect that a cheating happened and you can abort in that case. The second problem is actually much simpler to solve. If the corrupted party encrypts an incorrect share, the evaluator will recover the incorrect message. And note that the message is actually the secret key. You already have the public key. So you can just test that secret key against the public key, and you will detect that cheating has happened. So there's also an optimization we can use the same delta for the difference between every pair of wire labels. You can use the same delta across the whole circuit for the MAC key. And this would allow us to get some efficiency improvements. It reduces the communication by some constant factor. Okay. So now finally, let me move on to experiments and comparison.
So we'll have to wind up.
Yeah, I think I just need like a minute or two. Okay, so we compare the communication complexity with 3 different works mentioned here. All these 3 works support free XOR unlike us, and we have taken this into account in the comparison. So let's just go through the graph. So here, this brown line is our performance. So the number of parties is the x-axis, and then the communication is the y-axis. So as you can see, the main benefit of our work is that it's scalable as the number of parties increase, because we don't have any quadratic factor in the number of parties, right? So yeah, as the number of parties increase, you can see that our work starts outperforming the other 3 by even sometimes a factor of 10. Okay. Yeah, let me go to the last slide. So limitations, as I said, it will be very interesting to extend our work to the free XOR technique, because then XOR gates can be essentially implemented for free. And then the computational complexity, the PK operations are more expensive than symmetric key operation. Maybe there's a way to just use symmetric key encryption. And then the size of the garbled circuit scales with the number of parties, because the ciphertexts are not compact. Right? So yeah, the sort of the dream goal would be to achieve constant round MPC based on symmetric key primitives with free XOR and garbled circuit size that is independent of the number of parties. Okay.
Okay, so let's. Okay, so before we go for the coffee, any question for the author, speaker?
Thank you very much for your talk. So your scheme is dependent on the DTH and assumptions that it is secure, right? So it effectively makes you vulnerable to quantum adversary attacks. Is that correct? Did you consider making your scheme post-quantum?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it's an open problem. We don't know how to use post-quantum assumptions to instantiate the scheme.
See, thank you.
Okay, so I've seen the chart there where you used AES 128 for the garbling. So I wanted to ask, what have you used? Which is the maximum number of gates have you used for the garbling, like the algorithm?
The maximum number of gates?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so here it shows. So for the AES circuit, 6,400 AND gates,
yeah,
and 28,000 XOR gates.
Yeah.
So free XOR, really makes a difference here. Another circuit which we consider is equal number of AND and XOR gates,
okay.
2 to the power 13.
Okay. Thank
you. Okay. Here.
Hi, people. Thank you. Just a quick question. So the evaluation, the garbling is done with public key primitives now. So what happens with the evaluation? I guess the runtime computations, specifically speaking, is higher. Do you have an idea of how much? Like twice?
Yeah,
10 times?
actually, that's the slides I skipped. Yeah, so we have in the paper, like we implemented our protocol and we did measure the computational time as well, rather than just the computation. And yeah, here's the garbling time. sending garbled tables, and I think, yeah, this local encryption, this last row is what you're looking for. Preparing the garbled table entries, which is where the public key encryption comes in. And you can see that in terms of computation, this is the dominating.
But what about the
factor.
evaluation? When you want to evaluate the circuit, you have to decrypt.
This is encryption, local encryption.
Yeah, but when you evaluate the garbled circuit, you have to decrypt. So you have an idea about that?
I don't think I have the numbers here.
Okay, no, that's one.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I have a quick question. So can I say that the improvement in communication complexity is due to the black box uses of the underlying crypto?
I guess, yeah, that makes a big difference because if you use SPDZ and you're not involved in like you're not using the circuit of the encryption scheme, that makes the protocol efficient.
Okay, and another quick question. Do you know what the exact round complexity is? You say constant.
The exact round complexity. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, no problem. So with this, I think the session concludes, and let's thank Vipul and all the three speakers of this session. And we will meet in this room at 10:40 for the